My name is Tim Weidinger, and I'm a head of business development here at the Institute for Experiential AI at Northeastern University. Our mission here at the Institute is to provide human-centric, responsible AI solutions to the challenges that organizations are facing all over the globe. We support a number of practice areas, including AI for health, AI for life sciences, AI for climate sustainability. We have a team dedicated to delivering AI solutions at our AI Solutions Hub. And then we have a practice dedicated entirely to responsible AI, which is where we like to keep our optics. With me is, more interesting, is Sam Scarpino. I'll let him say a quick hi. He is our subject matter expert.
Thanks, Tim. Sam Scarpino. I'm the Director of Research in the Institute for Experiential AI. I'm also a computational biologist by training and faculty member in health sciences and computer sciences. So I also work actively at the intersection of AI and life sciences. As Tim mentioned, one of the things that's special about our institute is that we try to spend a lot of time collaborating with industry, nonprofit, and government partners to develop and implement AI solutions. That's one of the things I'm excited to share with you today, is some of the experiences that we've had over the past couple of years and what has led us to develop this AI ignition engine approach. So glad to be here, Tim, and looking forward to talking with you about the ignition engine.
Thank you, Sam. So ahead of the webinar today, we took a poll, and these are the results of the poll, and I'll go in order of most popular challenge to least. Number one is technology. Which AI tools and systems should we consider looking at or using? And at a high level, I can say over the last 2 years, it's funny, since the launch of ChatGPT in the fall of 22, coming out of that, the next 12 months, 84% of all organizations bought something off the shelf, which was, usually something involved in their tech stack, whether it be Microsoft or Google most commonly, and they said, "Ha, here's our AI strategy." Fast forward a year, and people said, "Oh, what did we get for that?" And the following year, 54% of the people started to build their own proprietary technologies. And so that brings us to today. And Sam, we talk to organizations all over the place all day. What are you kind of seeing out there in terms of, the buy, build debate? What's working, what isn't?
Yeah, what's interesting about this graph to me, Tim, is a couple of weeks ago now, you and I were discussing a survey that was comparing people's perception of AI readiness and strategy between folks that identified as being in the C-suite or other kind of upper management, and then folks who were kind of not identified as being in the upper management, with the overwhelming signal being that upper management felt like they had an AI strategy, a good roadmap, a plan, and everybody else sort of felt like they did not have a strategy and a roadmap and a plan. And so for me, understanding what technology to invest in is really about the business case that you're trying to solve for. There's not a whole lot that's different about AI than any other product or business decision that's going to be made. And that's part of what, for us, is really interesting about this ignition engine, is trying to understand what are the product or business needs inside of the organization. How does that stack up against data readiness, data literacy, AI literacy across the company? And then what are the technologies that are fit for purpose? So a specific example is if you have certain kinds of proprietary data that can't be transmitted readily over many different cloud providers, you may be more limited. If you have operations that have to occur in a bandwidth limited setting, like on edge devices, again, you're going to be more limited. If you have enterprise relationships with folks like Microsoft or any of the other big providers, again, you may be more limited. So part of what we also want to understand with these ignition engines are what are the technology constraints that you're operating under in the context of these business decisions that you need to make.
Well said, and you kind of, nice segue into the data. I mean, you speak to anybody who's been in AI for a minute, and they'll tell you don't have AI without data. But how real is that? That's a real problem that we see, right?
Well, as we know, there are many organizations that struggle when it comes to data strategy and implementing organization-wide data practices that result in high quality data to power business analytics or other kinds of decisions. And if you don't have that foundation, it's very challenging to move into the AI space without, as we see in the green here, wasted investment. You often have bigger gaps on the leadership and workforce side if you don't have that data culture. And similarly, your ability to manage risks is going to be in large part is going to come in large part to your ability to monitor and evaluate. And again, that's part of the data system. So from a really basic perspective, without good data, there's no good AI. But if you don't have these good data systems, it's very likely that there are many other areas that will need to be addressed inside of your organization. That's part of what we try to do with the Ignition engine, is identify what those gaps are and then propose strategies to ameliorate them, which could be, workforce upskilling, employee learning, change management as a part of that, implementing new data strategies. And sometimes those data strategies might be narrowly focused around a product that could be AI enabled. And so you don't necessarily need to think about company-wide changes in data practices, instead maybe piloting them within certain pillars of the organization. But really, it comes down to that data literacy and data readiness component as the key linchpin for the AI haves and the AI have-nots.
Yeah, I totally agree. In 2017, the president of Northeastern University, Joseph Aoun, wrote a book called Robot Proof, and in it he described 3 literacies to set yourself up for success in the new world that we were about to enter, which he felt was very AI centric. And the 3 literacies were technology literacy, data literacy, and human literacy. And too many times I'm in conversations with organizations, and when you start talking about their digital journey, and specifically as it relates to generative AI, they really understand how important it is to get their heads around both the data and the technology component. But what's left out sometimes is the human component. And getting back to that experiment over the last 2 years, whether people built things or bought things, the challenges and struggles that they usually ended up having had to do with them not properly upskilling and making their workforce aware of these new technologies and how to use them safely. Sam, I mean, are you sensing the same thing in the conversations you're having?
Well, it's definitely the case that a huge component of what's needed out in most organizations is AI and data literacy, upskilling, and solid strategy that's grounded in the business needs, but also in the existing data challenges and opportunities inside of an organization. The reason why I think things are a little bit different now than when President Aoun published his book is that it's no longer the case that the AI future is coming. It's that we are literally writing that future now, and it's going to unfold very, very rapidly over the next, it already is, but over the next 3, 6, 12 months. We're on effectively a quarter by quarter cycle in terms of rapid AI advancement. We're already seeing changes in terms of hiring and recruitment of individuals based on which tasks have been AI enabled, which companies have adopted AI. And so what's going to end up happening is that gap between the companies, organizations, business units that figure out how to use AI effectively and those that don't is going to grow exponentially over the coming quarters, over the coming years for sure, but it's going to be faster than that. Now really is the moment where there's still time to engage in that kind of transformation inside of your organization that will allow you to capture the AI moment. That's part of what is so much fun about being at Northeastern University, is not only do we get to engage in the kind of translational research, product development work that we do with so many of our partners, but we also go with them on that AI journey. We work across the spectrum from upskilling and change management through the development of new products, their launch, and then their monitoring and evaluation. And that's that full kind of start to finish that is so much fun and such a special part about being a university that's involved in AI outside of the academic part of it, but the part of it where the AI actually meets the real applications, where the real impact is happening.
Totally agree. I mean, the most exciting use cases are happening in organizations all over the world. Again, when you look at this 4th item here, avoiding wasted investment. I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you exactly how not to do it, but I can say, those early on who bought too early probably consider some of that maybe not as fruitful of an investment as possible. Those who built too early probably would say the same thing. And I think, Sam, you alluded to this. And, I think the old software cycles used to be every 3 to 6 months on an upgrade, or at least a decent upgrade. And the cycles that we're seeing are so compressed now around these launches where it's, gone from like 3 to 6 weeks to 3 to 6 days in some cases. I know, Meta and Llama just had a big announcement over the weekend. Like, any advice to those who, have either bought and have some regret or are considering making a firmer investment today on avoiding making some of those, some of those mistakes that have happened in the past?
It's a real challenge. I'm sure that one of the things that's happening at organizations is that either they've implemented really strict top-down control on the use of AI tools, or there's just been a rapid proliferation of the use of these tools in all aspects of the business that's only minimally being monitored and evaluated. It's a lot like what happened with Slack and some of the other messaging tools where people are going to use them if they make the work more fun, more efficient, more effective. And as a result, we're seeing many, many organizations that have been kind of playing it smart and waiting to make big investments with some of these AI vendors, suffering from the kind of proliferation of these tools and the ballooning costs associated with not having some of these enterprise licenses. And so one of the things that I think is really, again, important is to understand that if you don't have a strategy, oftentimes that strategy is going to be built for you, which in many cases might end up being worse than a slightly suboptimal decision now about locking in on a vendor contract as opposed to waiting. Now, what I can tell you, as you pointed out, is that almost every month there's some major new announcement from one of the big vendors. We saw ChatGPT now making it effectively free for all college students all the way through the finals period. And so I think you do want to be very cautious about locking into any of these vendor contracts. But it often means, because it's moving so fast, because there's so much competition, that there's a lot of room to negotiate. But if you're going to negotiate, you have to understand exactly what it is that you need, what are the opportunities inside of your organization, and how is that going to match up against the existing skills and the need to kind of upskill and go through some of that change management inside of the organization.
Yep. Thank you, Sam. And the last two, I know we're kind of a little bit against it with time, but managing AI risks, ethics, and compliance. I mean, we look at everything holistically through that responsible lens. And the way I look at this, Sam, is it's case by case, it's business by business, but ultimately you just need to have the proper governance structure in place that matches your corporate culture and your risk tolerance levels. I can say this, it's a lot of times it's what you don't see that makes the meaningful difference. And this is all about keeping your name out of the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I think you're probably seeing some of the same thing in the world that you're playing around in, especially in health and life sciences. I mean, it's really critical you get that right.
No, well, it's both critical, but it's also rapidly evolving as new tools come online, as the data set sizes change, as increasingly precision decisions are being made by medical and treatment teams, as pharmaceuticals are increasingly tailored towards smaller and smaller subsets of the population. And that's why, from a responsible AI perspective, we really think about this as an evolving journey where it's based on the norms, ethics, values of your organization, of your clients, of other stakeholders, but it's also something that's going to evolve as the regulatory landscapes evolve, but also as what we can and can't do with the tools changes, as we learn more about what is and isn't feasible with different size data sets that become available. So it really has to be a living process as your AI strategy continues to evolve and as what's possible changes, again, very rapidly.
I think that's in line with so many of these things. It's not end to end, right? It's end to infinity, because you have to, this is a journey that's going to take a really long time. And so you have to just be prepared to ride that out and be flexible and agile. And again, you have to be able to change quickly as the market also is doing. So, and only 4% invested, but not seeing ROI, which is interesting. I don't think it's definable, to be honest, but Sam, you may have an opinion here. Obviously creating
I mean, my
efficiencies.
guess is it's probably because not a lot of the respondents have been running these programs for long enough that they would have expected to see ROI.
Yeah.
It could also be because we're dealing with a bunch of sophisticated operators on the call who have, implemented smart strategies against clearly defined benchmarks, and that they've mostly been right about the hypothesis of where to invest, and so they're already seeing the ROI. Maybe that's the other percentage, but my guess is it's just because not a lot of these programs in most companies have been running long enough where you would have really expected to see that ROI coming in yet.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, all of this is to say we've had a lot of experience in working with organizations, and as a result of that, having seen what's worked and what hasn't, we have developed this tool called the AI Ignition Engine. And what it is an effort to really give you a data readiness and AI readiness and assessment of your organization from those three disciplines of data, technology, as well as your human capital, your people. And so I'll just run through what the Ignition Engine is real quick, unless there's any questions about what we just covered, which I don't see any yet. So um,
But
happy
certainly, if
to.
you do have questions as they come up, there's a Q&A panel that you can open and post those questions, and we'll answer them as they come in or during the Q&A period at the end.
Perfect. And we will identify those as they do. A day seldom goes by where I'm not talking to organizations, but also it's not uncommon for them to say, "You're with who doing what?" And that's exactly right. I'm with Northeastern University, and for those of you who are outside of the Northeastern corridor, we are an institute that has been around a really long time, 125 plus years of being in the business of education and doing it quite successfully. Those of you who are in and around the Boston region understand how critical the experiential learning part is, or if you're an undergrad student, what that co-op internship is all about as the undergrad experience. So all of this is to say we're a global network of over 14 campuses, which makes us very special. We have campuses in Seattle, Silicon Valley, Oakland, Toronto, Miami, Virginia, London. You get the idea. And so we have a holistic view of the world. And in addition to the resources we have at the Institute for Experiential AI, we can tap into a plethora of resources at NU. Maybe you want to just touch on that real quick, Sam, because it is really unique, and you've got more academia experience than me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, from our perspective, this word experiential, which is what sets our institute apart from other AI initiatives, means three things, and we've touched on them in the earlier part of the webinar. We just weren't explicit about it, but the first is acknowledging that all AI relies on human experts, whether that's labeling data, whether that's using data that have been labeled, whether it's identifying the use cases, evaluating the use cases, and there's no technology on the horizon that is likely to change that. In fact, one of our core research areas at the Institute is to better understand if that's even possible to develop these AI systems where the humans or the wet labs or the clinical labs have been removed entirely from the loop. The second is that many of the really hard problems are outside of the university. And these are the kinds of things where we can have huge impact, where our students going through the experiential education programs can get involved in real world, hands-on work that translates into good jobs. We actually hope often that you hire these people after they finish doing the co-op. And the third is, we used to say training the next generation. Now we just say training people to make better decisions with AI. So there's a huge number of individuals out there that are not AI practitioners. You're not building and running models, but you're having the output of these models put on your desk, and you're being asked to make a decision in whole or in part based on information that these models provided you. And you need to understand enough about what's under the hood to incorporate that into your decision process. And so that sort of three-pronged approach, human-centric or research lab-centric, real-world problem solving, and experiential learning and education, that all rolls up into that word experiential in the Institute's name.
Thanks, Sam. The Ignition Engine, what it is, why it is, how it is, deliverables, and here we are. So it's an expert-led framework, basically helping you as individuals and organizations approach AI responsibly, efficiently, and sustainably, no matter where you are in this adoption phase. We like to say we meet you where you are rather. We don't create challenges that don't exist. We actually are really curious about where exactly it is you are on this journey, and we'll meet you right there. World-class leaders. I mean, the combined experience in AI at the Institute is phenomenal. I mean, from the top down, Usama has over 3 decades of experience and 2 AI winners. I would argue, Sam, maybe keep me honest here, but there's a lot of caution around AI at the Institute, given all the experience that people have had.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, optimism, but caution,
cautiously
caution
optimistic.
tempered,
Yes.
caution tempered optimism.
um, it, it's crucial for all the reasons we just went through, which is, you get ideally when you come on the other side of this engagement, you are at a minimum going to have a better understanding of both your organization, and your compass will be pointed in a direction that if you are looking for the highest probabilities of success, at least you'll know where that's pointing. And that again is taking into consideration, the data, your technology, and your people. It looks something like this at a high level. The first phase is basically where we come in with subject matter experts in those 3 areas, and we identify and prioritize impactful AI opportunities. We'll workshop it with the decision makers that need to be involved in these decisions. The second and third phases involve a collaboration where we then align opportunities based on feasibility, resources, risks, and values. And Sam, maybe you can keep me honest again, but there's a difference between what you want to do sometimes and what's actually possible once you understand these 3 things. And I see it all the time, Sam. I don't know if you want to chime in.
No, I mean, I think the biggest gap, we certainly see a gap in terms of what's likely feasible at reasonable cost and what an organization thinks that they need. Although typically what ends up happening as we go through one of these processes, what we identify is an opportunity where there's relatively low hanging fruit. So for example, we work with the genomic tumor board out of the Jackson lab. We do some integration with large biomedical databases, but a lot of that work is efficient translation of intake documents into the cloud databases that are needed to power their business processes. So a lot of what we do with generative AI tools is just more efficient document processing. And this kind of thing, again, maybe isn't at the top of your list in terms of excitement, but it's going to have clear ROI, and it's very much in the wheelhouse of things that are feasible with AI that would have been a very heavy lift even a couple of years ago. And so doing that kind of stack ranking against, how exciting is something, how innovative is it? Can we find something that's exciting and innovative enough to get you excited, to get the board excited and everybody else, but is also very clearly rooted in return on investment and very feasible at reasonable cost with what's on the shelf today or kind of anticipated to be coming around the corner, at least in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and the end result is that roadmap I discussed. The 5 to 8 week sprint is really dependent on it. We need involvement from your side as well. I mean, we need to make sure that we have the right stakeholders in the room when we're going through each of these phases. Here's a more detailed description of these phases. We will provide a deck to all of those who attended the seminar today or the webinar today. But at the end, you're going to get that strategic AI roadmap, that prioritized list of opportunities to maximize ROI, however you're defining that. And a lot of times we will, of course, we'll follow your lead, but the low-hanging fruit, there's a ton of it out there. And I love this one, the Workforce Insights, because these tools, whether you build or buy them, are only going to be as good as the people you have to use them. This is what some of the team looks like, but again, will be the subject matters from each of those 3 disciplines will be involved in the process. And at the end, again, you'll come out and say, okay, what's our next move? Where's our talent at? Is it something, are we ready to actually build a solution? What is our governance structure looking like? Is that something we should focus on? Maybe we need to upskill. Maybe there's some research opportunities that we identified. Maybe holistically we do all of these things together and form an AI academy. But it's very flexible. It's again expert led, and that's at a high level what the ignition engine is. In summary, it's really an assessment tool that you will end up feeling better about the next decision you make on this digital transformation journey. So I'm going to stop
Part of the
sharing
reason
now.
that's
Go ahead,
part of
Sam.
the reason that's so important, Tim, we touched on this a little bit, is that because the pace is so rapid in the AI space. I know one of the things that I deal with personally on a day-to-day basis almost is an email, are we using this new thing yet? Whatever it was that was just released, DeepSeek a couple of weeks ago. Now it's ChatGPT being free to all college students. Tomorrow it's going to be something else. And if you don't have that strategy document in place, if you don't have that roadmap, if it's not lined up against business opportunities and kind of mapped against your existing employees' literacy and then the plan for upskilling, it's very hard to not end up in this sort of knee-jerk reaction where you're constantly just responding to the latest and greatest announcements. And that's a very good way to end up trapped in a bunch of expensive contracts, making very poor decisions with respect to AI investment, and really ending up kind of left behind with respect to the AI strategy.
Thanks, Sam. We did have some questions offline here, and one of these I find fascinating because the answer for me, Sam, is it's next to impossible. But how does the Institute stay current with the rapidly evolving landscape of generative AI to ensure that the recommendations that we're making are based on the latest advancements? I mean, to me, it's a second full-time job, but you've touched on it a little bit earlier, but
I can tell you, and I feel like a lot of people probably feel this, that some of my bosses at the university seem to be up on it. Like every morning I get an email wanting to know if we've used this new thing yet. And so some of it is just constantly, everybody's so excited that there's just a lot of buzz around anything that's new. We have a large institute of folks that are here, as well as about 100 faculty that work on core and applied AI. And so part of the benefit of being at the university is that there's just a large number of folks who are right out on the forefront of what's going on and what's feasible. And so, we're constantly hearing about these different advances. We're talking about it in groups. We're trying to understand how this fits into the work that we're doing. That's obviously one of the advantages of working with a university like Northeastern, is that part of what we try to do on the research side is make sure we understand what that landscape looks like. I did see actually a question in here, maybe in the last minute or so, about kind of how we evaluate, like, who's an expert in this space? How do we know who these experts are? How do you evaluate them? And from my perspective, anybody that tells you that they're an expert is probably overconfident in their abilities. I mean, there are people that definitely have a lot of expertise in the underlying methodological approaches to AI, thinking about data literacy. But I think this space is moving so fast that it needs to come with a huge amount of humility. Although one of the other things that's also quite different is so many more people are using AI. We work with a lot of biologists who have very traditional training in wet lab biology that have retooled and upskilled, over the past 5-10 years on the computational side of things. And so it isn't just as simple as looking at what somebody's credentials are. You need to understand something about the trajectory they've been on, ask a lot of questions about data literacy. But I think first and foremost, look for that humility. And if you don't find it, it's probably a bad sign.
Yeah, right. I understand exactly. I think we have another question in the room. Is that right? I can just call on them. Can they mic in? I'm not sure. TR is the initials. Julie, any thought on?
You could just read out the question. There's one I published now.
Oh, sorry, I flipped over there.
Here we go.
There it is. Like you guys said, this is very new space. Oh, sorry, I don't see the new question. I'm sorry, Julie. Maybe you could read it. I don't see it.
Yeah, if we don't see it, I know. I know we're coming up on time.
We're at time. Yeah.
You have Tim and my contact information. Happy to set up a time to ask and answer questions, just in general, or about the AI Ignition Engine. But thanks for having me, Tim, to talk about this.
Sam, thanks so much for joining us. We're excited for all of you who were able to attend today. Apologize for any technical difficulties, but I guess at the end of the day, our message to you would be, it's great wherever you are in this journey. It's a great place to be, and we'd love to explore with you, any of the challenges that you might be going through, and figure out a way where we could potentially partner with you on this journey. But thank you all for attending, and yeah, we look forward to connecting with you all.